something just broke open that the most powerful people in Hollywood never wanted you to see.
It was hard for me being that young and being in the industry and not knowing where to turn, and everyone, telling me they love me and, just turn their back on you in a second.
He was a teenager, and he was surrounded by predators.
I was a party favor.
What does that mean?
I was a party favor. I was somebody you could take off the table.
January 30th, 2026. The Department of Justice didn't open a vault. They detonated one.
Today we are producing more than 3 million pages, including more than 2,000 videos and 180,000 images. In total, that means that the department produced approximately 3.5 million pages in compliance with the Act.
3.5 million pages, thousands of videos, hundreds of thousands of images, all tied to Jeffrey Epstein's empire of blackmail and power. And buried inside those files, tucked inside forwarded emails and flight manifests, one name appeared that nobody expected: Ellen DeGeneres. And now, Portia de Rossi has broken her silence. What she's telling federal investigators about Ellen, Justin Bieber, and a private trip that was never supposed to go public has sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Ellen is reportedly in full panic mode, and the reason why might be the darkest secret she's ever kept. Ellen and Portia. For over a decade, they were Hollywood royalty, progressive, beloved, untouchable, but the cracks started showing long before anyone noticed.
Buddy Greg, who was one of her writers, was like, she's a piece of shit. And he was like, she's a monster.
Greg Fitzsimons wasn't alone. Dozens of former staffers described a culture of fear, psychological manipulation, and deliberate cruelty. Ellen's Be Kind brand wasn't just false, it was a calculated cover.
I was a producer on the Ellen DeGeneres show, won 4 Emmys. And would give them all back to have that time in my life. I had an NDA where I couldn't talk about her. And then now that she fled to England, which to me, like, the deportation thing is starting out on the right foot. And I think she wanted to move to a country, England, where being called the C word is kind of like a good thing.
Oh, yeah. Because you kind of blend in a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not as harsh.
Yeah.
And then came the move that nobody could explain away. Late 2024, Donald Trump wins the election. He publicly threatens to release the full Epstein files. Within weeks, Ellen and Portia pack up, leave their Montecito estate, and quietly settle into a farmhouse in the English countryside. The official story? They were disillusioned with American politics, but here's what nobody reported. Portia didn't want to go. Multiple sources close to the couple say Portia resisted. She had projects in development, a life in Los Angeles she wasn't ready to abandon. But Ellen insisted, and according to one insider, Ellen told Portia it was, quote, necessary for them to disappear for a while. Necessary. That word keeps surfacing. To understand what Ellen might be running from, you have to go back to 2010. Back to when Justin Bieber was 13 years old, freshly discovered, and being handed off to the most powerful people in entertainment. Usher was his mentor. Scooter Braun was managing him, and through those connections, Bieber was pulled into circles that included industry elites, Diddy, and Ellen DeGeneres.
It was hard for me being that young and being in the industry and not knowing where to turn, and everyone, telling me they love me and, just turn their back on you in a second. I don't wish that upon anybody. Yeah, if she ever needs me, I'm just a call.
That's not just a sad quote. That's a man describing betrayal so deep it still lives in his chest. Now here's the piece that everything hinges on. In early 2011, Ellen was photographed on a private yacht in the Caribbean. Barely any media coverage. But independent researchers combing through newly resurfaced flight logs and maritime records discovered something. That yacht made a stop near Little St. James, Epstein's Island. Ellen has never addressed it publicly, but Portia de Rossi apparently has, to federal investigators. According to sources who claim to have seen portions of Portia's testimony, she confirmed the yacht trip happened. She confirmed that during that stop, Ellen went ashore with a small group and that Justin Bieber was there. Let me be direct about what we know and what we don't. We do not have Portia's full testimony. What we have are second-hand accounts from people claiming knowledge of what she told investigators. But if even half of what they're saying is accurate, this is catastrophic. According to these sources, Portia told federal agents that Ellen brought Bieber to a private gathering on Epstein's island under the guise of a networking opportunity. Portia allegedly said she didn't go ashore herself, but Ellen was gone for several hours. When Ellen returned, Portia said she was acting strange, defensive. Portia asked what happened. Ellen allegedly told her, never ask about it again. Weeks later, a package arrived. Inside, photographs, images from that gathering. Portia says Ellen locked them in a safe and became paranoid about anyone finding them.
I know there are videos and photos. I know that Jeffrey had recording cameras in his...
Epstein recorded everything. That was his power. Blackmail, leverage, control.
If the cameras were rolling, if Ellen was there, if Bieber was there at 13 or 14 years old, those images exist somewhere. The question is who has them now? Now, connect the dots. Diddy and Ellen were publicly friendly for years. He appeared on her show. They joked about parties.
So tell me about your birthday party. Am I invited?
Yes. Yes, you're definitely invited. I invite you to all my parties. You just haven't seen to show up.
Well, it's on the East Coast. Well, that's why. Why don't you have one here on the West Coast? Maybe I'll have one at your house.
At the time, harmless banter. Now, people are asking a different question. What kind of parties was Diddy actually throwing? And why was Ellen so comfortable joking about it? Because Diddy's parties weren't just parties, they were controlled environments. Private, exclusive, phones confiscated. What happened inside stayed inside. And we know Justin Bieber was in those spaces.
Now he's having 48 hours with Diddy, him and his boy. They're having the times of their lives, you know, where we hanging out and what we doing. We can't really disclose, but it's definitely a 15-year-old's dream. You know, I have been given custody of him. You know, he signed to Usher.
I'm signed to Usher.
I had legal guardianship of Usher when you know he did his first album. I did Usher's first album. I don't have legal guardianship of him, but for the next 48 hours, he's with me. So and we gonna go full crazy.
Full buck. Full crazy with a 15-year-old, and nobody could talk about what they were doing. Connect that to Ellen, connect it to Epstein, connect it to the private gathering, the yacht, the photographs Portia allegedly witnessed. This is no longer a conspiracy theory. This is a pattern.
I was a party favor.
What does that mean?
It was a party favor. I was somebody you could take off the table.
Allie Carter has been speaking about Epstein's operation for years. She describes being brought to private events, elite gatherings, where she was treated as an object. Multiple survivors have described the same experience. Young people brought into spaces they didn't understand, surrounded by powerful adults, no way out. If Justin Bieber was in those environments at 13, 14, 15 years old, what did he experience and who put him there? January 30th, 2026. The DOJ releases what they called the largest document drop in the history of the Epstein case.
In total, that means that the department produced approximately 3.5 million pages in compliance with the act.
The internet went into overdrive. People searched for names, who flew on the jet, who visited the island, who knew what was happening. But almost immediately, something became very clear. The most important names, the ones that actually mattered, were blacked out. The government's explanation: we redacted to protect victims. And look, and victims deserve privacy. Nobody argues that, but here's where things fall apart. Congressman Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna co-authored the Epstein Files Transparency Act. When they finally accessed the unredacted versions, Massie came out publicly and said names were being redacted that had no business being hidden, names that weren't victims at all. Congressman Khanna stood on the House floor and read 6 of them aloud. 40 minutes after Massie confronted the DOJ, one of those names was quietly added back. But here's the thing. That name appeared correctly in over 4,000 other places in the files. They got it right every single time, except the one document that labeled that person a co-conspirator. That's not an accident. That's a decision. Protect the industry, not the children. That intoxication, that proximity to power, yes, is how these systems survive. You don't ask questions, you don't look too closely, you just enjoy the access. And that normalization, that silent complicity, is exactly what keeps predators protected. Here's the current picture. Ellen DeGeneres recently purchased a $27 million mansion in Montecito, California, right next door to Oprah Winfrey and Prince Harry. On the surface, she's returning to her old life, but insiders say she's in full damage control because Portia isn't just cooperating with federal investigators. Sources say she's also considering filing for divorce. If she does, no NDA, no protection, just the truth. Ellen reportedly knows this. She's been reaching out to old friends, gauging who's still loyal. She's hired crisis PR teams. She's consulting lawyers about what Portia can and cannot legally disclose. But here's the problem. If Portia has already given testimony to federal investigators, the truth is already out there. It's just a matter of time. Justin Bieber hasn't said a word publicly, but his silence speaks. In recent months, he's cut ties with almost everyone from his early career, stopped appearing at industry events, become fiercely protective of his wife Haley and their newborn. He's not just struggling because of headlines. He lived it. He was there. He saw things. He experienced things. 12:53 p.m. May 2nd, 2026. By John. Ellen presented herself as a safe space, a friend, a mentor. What if behind closed doors she was something else entirely? Here's what isn't being said loudly enough. The DOJ is still sitting on an estimated 2 million documents that have not been released, not even to Congress. We've seen 3.5 million pages, and what we found shook the world. Imagine what's in the 2 million they're still holding back. Epstein's operation didn't just create one set of evidence. He duplicated everything. Hard drives cloned, communications archived. And if Ellen's name appears in those files, not as a footnote, but as a participant, the walls are closing in.
Powerful people who caused us harm are being protected and we're being exposed. It is meant to silence us.
The survivors are speaking, the evidence is surfacing, and the names that were once untouchable are being questioned. Ellen has not been charged with any crime. But if Portia's testimony is corroborated, if photographs surface, if witnesses come forward, that could change. She fled once, she came back. But if what Portia is saying is true, there's nowhere left to run. So what do you think? Is Portia finally telling the truth the world needs to hear? Or is this the beginning of the biggest cover-up Hollywood has ever seen? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. And if this video opened your eyes to something, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story is nowhere near over. 2 million pages are still buried, and when more comes out, you'll see it here first. See you in the next one.